In this video, we're going to go over the May 2021 Paper 1 Timezone 2 exam. Question number 1 is an exponential functions question. I can tell because you have a number that's being raised to a power and the power is a variable. Therefore, this is an exponential function question. It says the amount in milligrams of a medical drug in the body T hours after it was injected is given by d of t equals 23 times 0.85 to the t power, where t is greater than or equal to 0. Before this injection, the amount of the drug in the body was 0. Write down the initial dose of the drug and the percentage of the drug that leaves the body each hour. If you understand exponential functions, you can very easily just tell by looking at the equation that the answer for part A, part 1 is going to be 23, and the answer for part 2 is going to be 15%. Now, if you don't know it by just looking, then basically what you have to realize is that the initial dose of the drug is going to occur at time equals 0. So what you want to do is substitute 0 for t. So you would have 23 times 0.85 to the 0 power. Anything to the 0 power is 1. So what you have is 23 milligrams. And we have to remember to put the units. Then it says, write down the percentage of the drug that leaves the body each hour. In an exponential function, when your base, which is the one that's being raised to your power, when your base is a number greater than 1, we have exponential growth. When that base is a number between 0 and 1, that means we have exponential decay. In this case, it's 0.85. And therefore, that means that we have exponential decay. And the 0.85 tells me that we're keeping 85% of the drug in the body from 1 hour to the next, which means that we are losing 15%. Okay, so in that particular case, again, you look at the base is 0.85 because the base is less than 1. This is an exponential decay problem. That means that we are losing 15% and we're keeping 85%. And the fact that it says write down told me initially this should be a pretty simple question. Part B, calculate the amount of the drug remaining in the body 10 hours after the injection. This is a 2-point question. That means that you should be showing how you are substituting and then use your calculator to get your answer. So to get your first point for method, you're going to replace time for 10. And be careful, make sure that you're putting in the correct units. In this case, it's 10 hours. We are measuring t in hours, so we can just substitute 10 for t. And you're going to show 23 times 0.85 to the 10th power. That is going to give you 1.4 method. The rest you're going to put by putting it into your graphing calculator. So in the calculator, you're going to enter 23 times 0.85 to the 10th power. And you're going to get the answer, 4.5281113. Remember, on the exam, you want to write down all the decimal values that the calculator gives you, and then you want to round to 3 significant figures unless they tell you otherwise. And so our final answer is going to be 4.53. Maybe you're asking yourself, do I have to put in this d of 10 at the beginning? And the answer is no. You're going to get credit for showing your work just by showing how you are substituting the 10 into t in the equation. So you can just write 23 times 0.85 to the 10th power. That's going to give you 1 point for method. And then, of course, getting your final answer. Question number 2. An inclined railway travels along a straight track on a steep hill as shown in the diagram. The locations of the station on the railway can be described by coordinates in reference to x, y, and z axes, where the x and y axes are in the horizontal plane and the z axis is vertical. The ground level station A has coordinates 140, 15, 0. And the station B, located near the top of the hill, has coordinates 25 to 50. All coordinates are given in meters. Find the distance between stations A and B. So what you're going to do is go to your formula packet, and under topic 3, geometry and trigonometry, you're going to go see that in section 3.1, they give you the distance formula and the midpoint formula for when you have x, y, and z coordinates. So here it is just an extension of the distance formula for when you have 2 points. So the distance formula is going to be applied here. You're going to have section 2, part A, and you would write the distance is equal to the square root of 140 minus 20 squared plus 15 minus 5 squared plus 0 minus 250 squared. You don't have to take the time to rewrite the formula. You actually don't get any points on the exam for just copying down a formula unless you substitute into the formula. So don't waste your time. So all of this is going to go straight into the calculator, and you're going to put the square root of 140 minus 20 squared. Make sure that you close the parentheses, plus 15 minus 5 squared plus 0 minus 250 squared. And you're going to get the answer 277.4887. Remember that you want to write this all down and then you want to round to 3 significant figures. On the exam, you would have gotten 1 point for attempting to substitute into the 3D distance formula, 1 point for your actual answer. And on the exam, you honestly don't have to write every single decimal value because you're going to round to 3 significant figures. And don't forget your units here are meters. Then it says station M is to be built halfway between stations A and B. Find the coordinates of station M. So they already had us find the distance formula. Now they're going to ask us to find the midpoint formula. So for the midpoint, we are going to do exactly the same thing. If you remember from the formula packet, we're going to do x1 plus x2 divided by 2, comma, y1 plus y2 divided by 2, etc. So in the problem, we're going to write 140 plus 20 divided by 2, comma, 15 plus 5 divided by 2, comma, 0 plus 250 divided by 2. You can use your calculator to get 140 plus 20 is 160. 160 divided by 2 is 80. 15 plus 5 is 20 divided by 2 is 10. 0 plus 250 is 250 divided by 2 is 125. And then here is your answer. A few things that you want to remember. Remember to always write anything that has to do with a point, like midpoint, as an ordered pair. In this case, it'll be an ordered triple because it's in the XYZ plane. So once again, this is a 2-point question. You get 1 point for attempting to substitute into the midpoint formula, and then your final answer will be your final point. Finally, for part C, write down the height of the station M in meters above the ground. This is just you understanding if they want to put station M halfway through, which one is going to give us the height above ground. And in this case, the answer is going to be 125 meters. Because notice that this is our X, this is our Y, and so our Z, which is responsible for the height, that's going to be the one that we want. And so the answer for part C is going to be 125 meters. Question number 3 looks like it's a geometry question. It says a storage container consists of a box of length 90 centimeters, width 42 centimeters, and height 34 centimeters. Right away, I can tell that we have the same units, which is always good to check because every once in a while, IB exams are going to give you different units that you have to convert. But here, all the units are the same. And a lid in the shape of a half cylinder, as shown in the diagram. The lid fits the box, the top of the box exactly. The total exterior surface of the storage container is to be painted. Find the area to be painted. In this particular problem, it is 7 marks. This is all the information they give you. And to figure out the area to be painted, that means that you want to find surface area. In terms of surface area, this is a combination shape. What you have right now is basically the bottom of a box, which you can basically pretend that it's an open box. So right here, because all of these parts are going to be shaded. So in terms of a box, in order for you to figure out surface area, you have to take into account the different sides of a box. A box typically has 6 sides. You have length, you have width, and you have height. So in this case, we're going to make 90 the length just because it's a bigger number, 42 the width, and 34 the height. So I'm going to start by understanding that I have this side here. This is one side, which is the same on the other side, and it's going to be painted. So that's going to give me 90 times 34. And again, there's 2 of those. So we're going to work with the box at the bottom, and we're going to have twice the length times the height, 2 times 90 times 34. And again, 90 times 34 because we have a rectangle, which is right here, 90 times 34, but there's two of them. There's one on each side. Now I'm going to work with the front and back. So here, this right here, this rectangle is going to measure 42 by 34, because remember the height is 34. So even though we don't see it all around, we know that the height is 34. Okay, so every single one of these is going to be 34, 34, and in the back is also 34. So just like before, I have a front and back because I have two of those. So I'm going to multiply here 42 times 34, and there's two of them. So I'm going to put plus, in this case would be width times height, twice 42 times 34. Now, typically every box is going to have a top and a bottom. So in this case, I can actually show you what that would look like. Here would be the top. This one down here is the bottom one. But this is a combination shape. Therefore, we don't need the top of this box. We really only care about the bottom because the bottom is going to be painted. So the bottom, there's only one of them, is going to be 90 times 42. So right now I've taken care of the bottom of this storage container. I've taken care of this bottom side in the front, in the back, this side right here, and this side in the back. Okay, so right now I've taken care of everything that is the box of this storage container. Now I have to worry about painting the top. And the top, they told us, is in the shape of a half cylinder. So in terms of this cylinder, you want to go to your formula packet. This is geometry and trigonometry, and you want to find what is the surface area of a cylinder. So the surface area of a cylinder is in the beginning of topic 3 formula packet, where it says prior learning. And if you notice, what they give you is the area of the curved surface of a cylinder, which is 2 pi rh. R is the radius and h is the height. So 2 pi rh in a cylinder, that is just the curved surface. So if I were to draw this cylinder standing up, the cylinder is composed of a base at the bottom and at the top, which are basically two circles. Then you have this part, which if you can imagine like a can of soup, it's like the label that goes around the can of soup. And that is what is called the curved surface of the cylinder. And so basically the label, what goes around that curved surface, that's the part that's 2 pi rh. In our case, we don't only want to paint just that curved surface, which is all of this part right here, but we also need to take into account the top and bottom circle, the two circles. So that means that I'm going to have to add 2 pi r squared. But then because this is in the shape of half cylinder, I'm going to have to take these answers and I'm going to have to divide them by 2. So you have a choice. You can either go ahead and find the entire answer and then divide it by 2 at the end. Or right now, if I realize that I have 2 pi rh plus 2 pi r squared divided by 2, I know that in order for me to get the surface area of this half cylinder, then it's basically going to be pi rh plus pi r squared. And so for us, we have to figure out what is the radius. So this is where your spatial ability comes into play. In this case, this right here for my circle, if I were to make this a full circle, then this right here would be the diameter, okay, all the way across. They haven't explicitly told you what the radius is, but you should be able to tell what the diameter is. Because here, this is 42, that means that this is 42. That means the diameter of my circle for the cylinder is also going to be 42, which means the radius is going to be half, which is 21. And that honestly is one of the more challenging parts about this problem. It's not so much that you don't know how to find surface area of a half cylinder. It's that you're going to be sitting there trying to figure out, wait a minute, what's the radius? So again, here I have my circle. I know the entire length here is 42, so half of it tells me that the radius is going to be 21. The other thing that we need to figure out is the height of the cylinder. When the cylinder is standing straight up and tall, it's easy for you to understand that that's going to be the height. So if you were to turn this cylinder on its side, then you'll be able to tell that the height of the cylinder is going to be this part right here, just like before, but now it's going to be laying down. So in this case, the height of the entire cylinder, what connects the two circles together, is going to be 90. So I'm going to replace this information into my formula. I'm going to leave pi. The radius is 21. The height of the cylinder is 90 plus pi times the radius squared. Put this all into your calculator. So in this case, you want to make sure that you use the entire value of pi to avoid round off error. So it's going to be pi times 21 times 90 plus pi times 21 squared. And that's going to give you your answer. So this is 7323.052476. And it kind of keeps going because remember, pi is an irrational number. So now you're going to take your two answers, the answer you got from the first part of the box, plus the answer that you got right now for the half cylinder, and you're going to add them together. So this means that the area to be painted is 12,756 plus 7323, which is going to give us 20,079 square centimeters. And if you want to take the time to go ahead and rewrite this to 3 significant figures, you can. Otherwise, you would still get the final points for the final answer right now. But you can write this as 20,100 square centimeters, and that would be your final answer. Okay, so question number 4 looks like a trig question just by looking at the triangles. I can kind of hint at the fact that it looks like it's going to be a SOH-CAH-TOA, a trigonometric ratio sine cosine tangent type problem, which means that we've already done several types of geometry trig questions from topic 3. The diagram below shows a helicopter hovering at point H 380 meters vertically above a lake. Point A is the point on the surface of the lake directly below the helicopter. Minta is swimming at a constant speed in the direction of point A. Minta observes the helicopter from point C as she looks upward at an angle of 25 degrees. After 15 minutes, Minta is at point B and she observes the same helicopter at an angle of 40 degrees. Write down the size of the angle of depression from H to C. Angle of elevation and angle of depression are always based on your line of sight. So if here's your eye, your line of sight is looking straight across. When you look up, we call this the angle of elevation. And when you look down from your line of sight, this is what's called the angle of depression. So right now they want the angle of depression from H to C, which means for this helicopter, if I were to draw this dotted line to represent its line of sight, then looking down to C, this right here is going to be the angle that I want to find. One of the biggest things in these trig questions and geometry questions when it comes to triangle is to be on the lookout for parallel lines. Right here, I have a parallel line with this one right here. This is called my transversal, which means that these right here are alternate interior angles. So I know that the angle of depression is going to be 25 degrees. And I keep reminding you that every time the question says write down, it is supposed to be easy. And it is only a 1-point question. You're going to either get it right or you're going to get it wrong. So your best thing to do for every single 1-point question is to take a guess. Even if you have no idea what you're doing, you might get something right. So in this case, you're either between 25 degrees or 40 degrees because it's a write down 1-point question. It should be very simple. But if you remember that these two lines are parallel, cut by a transversal, then the answer is 25 degrees. So from here, it says to find the distance from A to C. Here is the distance from A to C. Basically, what I have is this triangle. Now, because the helicopter is hovering right over, I know that this is a 90-degree angle. One of the biggest mistakes students make all the time is assuming that we have right angles when you don't. But in this particular case, because it says the diagram below shows a helicopter hovering at point H, which is vertically above a lake, that means that we are safe to assume that that is going to be a right triangle. When you have a right triangle, you can use sine, cosine, tangent to be able to answer these questions. Or you can use the Pythagorean theorem, a squared plus b squared equals c squared. However, in this case, here is my right triangle, okay? It's this big outer triangle right here. And what I know is that this angle for this corner of the triangle that I've outlined in blue is 25 degrees. And I know the height from basically that part of the lake all the way to the helicopter is 380. So right now, according to the angle that I am working with, which is the 25-degree angle, I am going to label right across from it 380 as my opposite side. And then, of course, the hypotenuse is opposite of the 90-degree angle. So that would be the hypotenuse. And that leaves this bottom part to be the adjacent part, which is the part that I'm trying to solve. So right now, the relationship that I have is opposite and adjacent. So you go to SOH-CAH-TOA, which by the way is not in the formula packet. This is something that you have to have memorized, and I have seen students to completely screw this up because they don't know the acronym. So please learn it. Okay, so in this case, we have opposite and adjacent, which means the relationship is going to be tangent. When you set up tangent, you're going to say the tangent of the angle, 25 degrees, it is always sine, cosine, tangent of the angle is equal to opposite, which we decided is 380, divided by the adjacent side, which we don't know, and it's going to be a C. You can make that X if you like, if it makes you happier, but I'm just going to go ahead and use a C. So in this particular case, to solve this, I know that AC is equal to 380 divided by the tangent of 25. This is just the algebra where I basically multiplied by AC on both sides. And then I had to divide by the tangent of 25. Okay, so it's just the algebra at play here so that I can cancel these out. And I can cancel these out and be left with AC is 380 divided by the tangent of 25. In your calculator, when you reset the calculator before you go to your examination, you have to make sure that you change it to degree mode. Otherwise, any of these trig questions that have to do with angles are all going to be wrong. So make sure that your mode is changed to degree mode and not radian. Once your calculator is set in degree mode, it is in degree mode until you reset it or change the mode once again. So now I'm going to enter 380 divided by the tangent of 25. Press enter. So my answer is 814.9126. Always get into the habit of writing a few decimal values and then rounding to 3 significant figures, which in this case would be 815. And the units here are going to be in meters. So the final answer is 815 meters. Are there other ways to figure out the answer? Yes, of course you can, because if you wanted to, you could figure out each piece individually, but honestly, it's going to be a whole lot more work. So in this particular case, I think looking at the triangle completely is going to make your life a little bit easier. So now they ask you to find from B to C. Notice right here, I have another right triangle, and I could very easily find AB again by doing tangent. So I can say the tangent of 40 is opposite over adjacent, just like we did the previous problem. That's going to give me that AB is equal to 380 divided by the tangent of 40. And I can put that into my calculator to find out that AB is approximately 452.866. And it keeps on going, okay? And then what I can do is take the entire length of AC and I can subtract AC minus AB, and that's going to give me BC. So in other words, 815 minus 452 53, just about, if I round to 3 significant figures, and I'm going to get the answer for just that part, which is about 362 meters. So that for me is an easy way to figure out the answer, since we already figured out AC. So is there another way to do this problem? And the answer is yes. You can use sine rule if you'd like. However, I feel like it's a little bit more work. Right now, this forms a 180-degree angle, a straight angle. Therefore, I know that this angle has to be 140 because combined, all of this is going to be 180. But I'm still missing a side length in order for me to be able to do this, which means that I still have to work with this triangle right here, and I can figure out HB. So like I said, yes, there's another way of doing the problem, but I think it's more complicated. So I would have to find HB by doing opposite over hypotenuse, which is sine. So you can set up the sine of 40 degrees is equal to opposite over hypotenuse, which is HB. And then you're going to get that HB is equal to 380 divided by the sine of 40. So now I know that 380 divided by the sine of 40, that's going to give me about 591.175 ... And now I have enough information to set up sine rule. So in sine rule, I can say the sine of 25 degrees is to its opposite side, 591.175 ... as the sine of, and then remember, I'm trying to find BC. The entire triangle that I have in purple has 3 angles that add up to 180. So if I do 180 minus 140 minus 25, I know that the very top angle right here is going to be 15 degrees. So I would say as the sine of 15 degrees is to BC. So notice, again, there's a lot going on there because not only did I have to find HB with SOH-CAH-TOA, then I have to add up those 3 angles and subtract from 180. And now I have to use sine rule to be able to come up with this answer. So yes, there's another way of doing the problem, and maybe in your brain, this clicks a little bit more. However, I find it to be a little bit more work than just going straight to figuring out by subtracting. And so when you cross multiply, you're going to get 362, just as we did before. Okay, then for our final part of the question, it says find Minta's speed in meters per hour. So this means that we have to go back to the question to find out any other information that's pertinent to this part right here, which has to do with speed and time. So you know that distance is equal to rate times time. And if we go back, it says after 15 minutes, Minta is at point B and she observes the same helicopter at an angle of 40 degrees. So Minta has gone from point C to point B in 15 minutes. So distance equals rate times time. In order for us to figure out her speed in meters per hour, you're going to have to figure out how much she has traveled in an hour. So you're going to have to take her distance and multiply it by 4. So Minta has traveled 362 meters going from point C to point B in 15 minutes. There are 4 15-minute intervals in 1 hour, which means that if I multiply 362 times 4, it tells me that she has traveled 1448 meters in 1 hour. So distance is rate times time. Her speed is distance divided by time. She has traveled 1448. And if you divide that by 1 hour, then you're basically back to what we figured out in the first place. So the answer for this question is that she has traveled 1448 meters per hour. And that concludes question number 4. Okay, question number 5 is finally statistics. In this particular exam version, they gave a lot of questions on geometry and trigonometry. But this one is a stats question, and it is a box and whisker plot. The number of sick days taken by each employee in a company during a year was recorded. The data was organized in a box and whisker diagram as shown below. For this data, write down the minimum number of sick days taken during the year. Very easy question. It says write down. You can tell by looking, the minimum is right here. Now, be careful with the scale, okay? Because if something is going to mess you up, it's the scale. Notice how many little spaces, and I'm going to zoom in so that you can see it better. How many spaces from 0 to 5? We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. That means that we're going by every 2, okay? So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So right now, the minimum is going to be 2 sick days. And all you have to do is write down the number 2. For part 2, the lower quartile. The lower quartile is your Q1. So in the box right here, this would be your lower quartile. Remember, they were going by 2s, so the lower quartile is 6. The median in the box and whisker plot is basically the line that goes straight down in the center of the box. So to find the median, we're going in intervals of 2, 7, 8, 9. So right here, the median is 8. That is a total of 3 points, 1 point per question. You don't even have to write Q1. On the exam paper, you would just have part A, part 1, 2, part 2, 6, part 3, 8. And again, it says write down. So that tells me that this was a pretty easy question. Paul claims that this box and whisker diagram can be used to infer that the percentage of employees who took fewer than 6 days is smaller than the percentage of employees who took more than 11 sick days. State whether Paul is correct. Justify your answer. A box and whisker plot takes your data and it cuts it into 4 equal parts. So if we take a look at the percentage of employees who took fewer than 6 sick days, here we're talking about the space in the first quarter. Okay, don't get confused with quartile and quarter. We use a box and whisker plot to split this up into 25% intervals and split up the data into 4 quarters. The reason why you see some parts longer than others is because a box and whisker plot tells us about the spread of each 25%. So right now, the percentage of employees who took fewer than 6 sick days, it's kind of hard to say that in a row, is 25%. And if we look at the percentage of employees who took more than 11 sick days, which is going to be right here, then that means that we also have 25%, and that would be our 4th quarter. So it says Paul claims that the box and whisker diagram can be used to infer that the percentage of employees who took fewer than 6 sick days is smaller than the percentage of employees who took more than 11 sick days, and Paul is wrong. It says state whether Paul is correct and justify your answer. The first thing you have to do is state whether Paul is correct or incorrect. So the easiest thing that you can say here is that basically Paul is incorrect because 25% of the employees, according to this box and whisker diagram, took less than 6 sick days and 25% took more than 11 sick days.